Kicking off the list at number 10. Beast Boy and Raven. Okay, they say opposites attract, so when you put together an immature shape-shifting prankster with a half-demon sorceress, things are bound to get a little weird at some point. Fans weren't really sure why the two had it out for each other, being so different and all. See, everybody didn't really expect them to last. Even during their time together, readers found it just not that thrilling. The chemistry was just, dare I say, bland, or not as big as some other relationships. Like in the early 2000s cartoon, she's annoyed by Beast Boy. She doesn't like how he's immature and how he does pranks and how he doesn't use his indoor voice ever, and she found his comedy to be annoying. And then in season 4 of Teen Titans Go, episode 12, it shows Beast Boy writing a song to tell Raven how he feels about her. And then in episode 13, Beast Boy tours with the song, but it annoys Raven. So he's playing his heart out, and she's like, I don't know, not really. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you haven't already, please go ahead down below and give us a thumbs up because it really does help the channel out a lot and it makes us feel good in our tummies. So please go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Thank you so much, and back to the list. Number 9. JINX and Kid Flash. The Teen Titans show from the early 2000s, we saw Cyborg and JINX flirting a lot while they were fighting. It was good, it's a nice little dynamic, keeping it real. They were fan favorites, and she was this villainous teenage sorceress who hit enemies with bad luck. And then in the episode Lightspeed, which aired in the final season, we see the introduction of Kid Flash. And in the same episode, this romance between him and JINX was born, in the same episode, which in turn resulted in her switching over to the good side, which is great. I mean, yay, go team. Like, that's a great win, but in one episode, with all that groundwork with Cyborg just kind of washed away, viewers weren't too pleased at the choices. Number 8. AQUAGIRL and Static. Guess you can say there wasn't a lot of friction with this one. Static. Okay, yeah, you're right. Guys, love is all about timing. Maybe you bump into somebody at a coffee shop, maybe you hit it off then, and then Bob's your uncle. Or maybe you meet somebody when you're captured by the TERRA Titans and you're forced to fight as gladiators in the Dark Side Club. Whatever your origin story is, I hope the love works out. Well, that's just the case for Static and AQUAGIRL. See, when she got back to Titan's Tower, she decided to rejoin as a member with no other options really at that point. And she was getting along with these heroes as well, specifically Blue Beetle and Static. Like, she flirted a bit with Blue Beetle, but with Static, he was also a victim from the Dark Side Club, and they had a lot more in common because they're both kind of going through that together. You go through shit together, you get close. That's how it goes. He was also a victim from the Dark Side Club, and she convinced him to stay with the Teen Titans afterwards. So they had some history there, be it good or bad. So she convinced him to stay with the Teen Titans, although he had a family that was worried sick about him, and they were missing for like months, right? And the issue that fans recognized with this whole fling is that AQUAGIRL was a flirt with the entire team, and it just didn't make sense for them both to share any affection with each other at this point. Number 7, Raven and Kid Flash. Raven needed help from the Teen Titans, but when she went looking for it, the team was not together at the time. So she enlisted the help of Kid Flash, whom she had a relationship with, and they were both able to convince the Teen Titans to get back together. Sounds like the perfect couple. Sounds like they're working it out awesome. I mean, being able to put together a team of supers, like, that's hashtag couple goals right there. Only the thing was, they weren't really in love. Yeah. See, later it was revealed that Kid Flash's feelings were all part of the spell that Raven used on him. She manipulated his feelings, so of course, after that point, it's safe to say the trust between the two was a little bit jaded, a little bit weak. Number 6, Nightwing and Mirage. Miriam Delgado, aka Mirage, comes from the future. And in that future, she's together with Nightwing, who ends up not actually being Nightwing. So Mirage, Redwing, and others joined their forces and became the Team Titans. And the only way to defeat Lord Chaos was to travel back in time and take out his mother. The classic time heist go-to scenario. So they went back 10 years, but they ended up in a different timeline. Also, that's how time works. Never works. Classic time thing. Hey, you wanted this? Nope, now you're in the 50s. So they still went ahead with their plan anyways, and then Mirage thought it would be a smart idea to impersonate Starfire and try and get with the leader of the new Titans, Nightwing. See, that plan didn't work after all, but they ended up joining forces to take out Lord Chaos anyways. So Starfire during this time, of course, lost a lot of trust for Mirage. So she hooked up with who she thought was her future man, and Dick didn't even notice during this crazy night that it wasn't her. It's just, this is definitely one for the books. Number 5, Nightwing and Raven. Nightwing and Starfire worked together for a while. They were members of the team, they got along, and they're probably one of the better couples. If we did a list about top 10 better couples, they would for sure be in that list. So they were about to get married. They were so close. They were literally right there at the altar when all of a sudden Raven showed up to destroy the wedding, even taking out the priest before he made it official. So Starfire and Dick ended up calling it after some time because Starfire felt like Dick wasn't really in it for the long run, and then Dick was kind of like, you're not wrong. So Raven and Dick were never a couple in the comics. This is an important note. So for her to come out all of a sudden and be attracted to Nightwing was just the writers trying to make Dick seem like a bigger catch at this point. Raven was just getting used to having emotions at this time, being fair, but when it came to keeping it cool around Dick, or rather Nightwing, but when it came down to keeping it cool, acting chill around Nightwing, she just couldn't get a grip, but everything else in her life she could control. She just had to ruin the wedding, eh? I mean, no dancing to show, no white wine. Number 4, Kid Flash and Solstice. When Bart was captured and forced to serve a life of labor on a distant and lonely planet, Solstice, who at the time was in love with him, just head over heels, took out an agent of the functionary just so she could serve the same punishment and be with him. I remember one time in high school, I said I was part of this group that was slacking off. I got in trouble just so I could go to detention with them, or else I'd eat alone, you know? Ride or die, let's do it. So I get it, but I mean, these stakes were just, a tad higher. So Bart, Kieran, and Superboy decide to remain in the 30th century, and Bart and Solstice were trapped on the planet Takaran Galtos, forced to kill and survive. All the while, love just flows in the air between them. Number 3, Robin and Wonder Girl. This next one is absolutely insane. Okay, so gross as well. So after the death of Superboy in Infinite Crisis, Robin's plan was to try and replace him with a clone using Superboy's corpse. Now, of course, that was way easier said than done, and this failed over and over and over again. So Wonder Girl waltzes in and then sees Robin frustrated at these failures, and he starts to destroy all of these attempts of a clone. Then they both bonded over how upset they were at the loss of Superboy, and with all the remains of all these clones just strewn about, just squishing under their feet, they shared a kiss while a tear was coming down their face. Beautiful moment, definitely a beautiful moment to be like, hey, we're gonna get through this, like I miss him too. But like, you're standing on his spleen. You're standing on like 7 of his spleens, all these clones. I'd be like, hey, can we mop first? Like this is gross. I'm hearing squishy squishes while I'm trying to hug you. Can we please get a janitor? I mean, bonding over a death, sure, that's normal, but bonding over the death of somebody that's spilt around you, no way, we can't overlook that. Number 2, Beast Boy and TERRA. She pops up in the 2nd season episode titled TERRA, of course, when she's running away from a giant scorpion, which sounds like all my nightmares, sounds terrifying. Massive scorpions, no thank you. So the Titans, of course, come to the rescue, but help is not something she needed, really. Yeah, she was actually leading the scorpion into a trap where she would then use her powers to cause this stone bridge to collapse and take out this giant arachnid. And then when she introduces herself to the team, Beast Boy gets shy. He turns into a shy boy. He turns himself into a little turtle, which is something I try and do often. I'm like, oh, we got company. Back into my shell. This neck goes all the way into this hoodies when I'm nervous, when I'm a shy boy. And she loves it. She thinks he's hilarious. She thinks he's the cutest guy ever. Fair. So now TERRA and Beast Boy are close. Beast Boy convinces TERRA to stay with the team and train, but during that conversation by the water, TERRA accidentally moves a rock that Beast Boy's sitting on, so now the secret is out. TERRA cannot control her powers. The next day when she's being tested by the team on said powers, Beast Boy gives a few words of encouragement and she completes it. Perfect, love it. This sounds great so far, Taylor. What are you getting at? Does it get worse? This is number 2 for a reason. Then they receive a signal that Slade Wilson has returned and they track his location. So Beast Boy invites TERRA. TERRA's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Clearly I passed this test, let's do it. So TERRA ends up cornering Slade, and then Slade explains how the team will get rid of her once they realize she can't fully control her powers. He's playing the mind game, okay? But his whole pitch here is that he can surely help with that aspect. He can help her control the powers. So she tells him to hit the road, and then she becomes a full member. Now, during a rendezvous with Beast Boy, the couple cross paths with Slade again, and then Slade reveals that TERRA had been a spy the whole time. And to make matters even worse, somehow, in the Judas Contract storyline in the comics, one of the main reasons behind this betrayal was that she, at 15, and Deathstroke were in love. Let's go a little bit higher. Maybe like a lot higher, Deathstroke. I don't know. I mean, age is just a number. Sometimes that number is 15, and sometimes these storylines are pretty. And finally, number 1, Donna Troy and Terry Long. Of course, for number 1, we have to end on the worst couple of all time. So Donna married Terry Long, who was a college professor at the time, and he was in his 30s and was previously divorced. And Donna, again, age is just a number. She was 19 years old and in his class. Yeah, she was his student. He was the teacher. So, oof. So Terry was working a few jobs just to make ends meet, but he wasn't a great boyfriend while they were dating by any means. He hit on her friends numerous times and he used her to get some clout. They were married with a kid until a car crash was just written into the story, taking out Terry and his son, who would go on to become Lord Chaos. So yeah, get rid of a lot of that stuff. Let's just get rid of a lot of that stuff. Fans were not happy with this element of the story, and it's totally justified. And also, bonus points for him hitting on Starfire, and then Starfire also had a crush on him back while this was happening. It was just a mess. I feel like I was watching The Bachelor in Paradise. Just ugh.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Monster Girl. Once known as Monster Woman, this superhero has abilities that remind me a bit of Benjamin Button meets the Incredible Hulk. You heard me right. We've got a shapeshifter who can transform into an insanely powerful, monstrous version of herself, but each time she does it, she de-ages a little bit. So after a whole bunch of fights, the once adult hero became a teen who was then progressively become even younger. What some folks will do to fight crime. Although I'd say some people wouldn't see that reverse lifespan as such a bad thing, right? Especially if at some point you could hang up your transforming days and just live life out as a younger version of yourself. Her origin story is especially weird too. She had at one point been on a class trip to Europe soaking in the culture. During this expedition, she met a boy and fell in love, eventually sleeping with him. His grandmother saw them do the deed and did not approve. Instead of yelling at her grandson or telling the monster girl to get out of town, she decided to curse her instead. By casting a spell on a strand of her hair, the old woman imbued Monster Girl with her troll-like transformative appearance. As a young lass, this really upset her, especially as she could not control her powers at first. These days, the transformation is better understood and she has more refined control over it. Weirder still, she managed to mate with a female Flaxen while in her monster form, who would later give birth to a child. There's a lot going on, obviously. Coming in at number 9, we've got Donald Ferguson. Now, who does this guy remind you of? Be honest, I want to gauge your genuine reaction. I'll give you a few seconds to lock in your answer. Alright? He looks like Bobby Hill. Yep, now you'll never be able to look at this high-ranking member of the Global Defense Agency the same way again. Hell, it could very well be the son of Hank and Peggy Hill, all grown up and with some cybernetic enhancements and an identity change. The haircut, the way he carries himself, everything. Plus, get this, there's an episode of King of the Hill where Bobby is reading a knockoff Invincible comic called Unvincible. I don't know if that means King of the Hill exists in an alternate version of our current universe, or if they're in the Invincible universe and somebody's made a comic subtly ripping off some heroes. Either way, Ferguson raises a lot of questions and gives a lot of folks weird deja vu. And also, he's full of robotic weapons and wants to karate chop kaiju. Good for him. Coming in at number 8, we've got Best Tiger. Not Good Tiger, Best Tiger. What an absolute legend. A play on the blind swordsman, Best Tiger wears a blindfold over his eyes whenever he fights crime. And he is always fighting crime. Even if it doesn't look like he's fighting crime, he's fighting crime. This green and black clad gunslinger can hit any target from pretty much any distance with little to no effort. He once took out 12 targets with one ricocheting bullet. He's just so very intense. It's hard to say what his personality is at all because he's so committed to taking out bad guys and solving mysteries. It seems to be all he does, which for all the good guys tends to be pretty helpful. However, he's not the most fun to hang out with, nor does he provide too much in the way of interesting character development. But what he can do is determine that someone was taken over by a ghostly villain by the sound of wind whistling through her freshly shaved pits. Nobody does it like Best Tiger, and that's probably for the best. As long as he keeps doing Best Tiger stuff anyways. Coming in number 7, we've got Space Racer. There aren't too many folks out there with weapons that can kill Viltrumites. Space Racer is one of the lucky few, and his weapon does a whole lot more than taking out super powerful aliens. It can also shoot right through just about anything with crazy beams of power, and if anyone tries to take it from him, it'll end up right back in his hand. Pretty sweet, right? Plus, he's got a wicked space motorcycle, which is the reason behind his name. For ages, he would just whip through the galaxy. That is, until he fought Omni-Man and ended buried under rocks in an asteroid belt. 100 years after that fateful fight, Omni-Man returned with a new request and managed to yank Space Racer out of the rocks. He might not be the most outlandish character going, but where else are you going to find a space motorcycle riding, insanely powerful magic gun-slinging green dude who can survive 100 years without food? Coming in at number 6, we've got D.A. Sinclair. Super smart Ivy League types tend to be a bit much, eh? Well, most folks in academia have nothing on D.A. Sinclair. He believes that human failings can be corrected through engineering and that folks can just be taken and changed into something else if it helps him achieve his goals. Of course, this leads him to kidnapping all sorts of folks and performing experiments on them in order to perfect his Reanimen. These recreated humans were mind controlled by Sinclair, with the first one ending up suicidal after realizing what it had become. Jeez. Jeez, DA, did you have to do him like that? On top of being a genius level intellect and a lunatic to boot, he actually ends up working with the good guys in the end, as his inventions are adopted by the Global Defense Agency, so I guess good on him. That still doesn't really make up for spitting in the face of the sanctity of human life, but hey, he essentially embodies the idea that if you're gonna make an omelet, you gotta crack a few eggs. Coming in at number 5, Alan the Alien. For years, folks on Earth assumed that Alan was an enemy. He would appear every 3 years or so and fight whoever came out of the woodwork. However, it didn't seem like he was down to kill anyone, and nobody could take him out themselves. Well, as it turned out, our one-eyed friend wasn't here just to fight a bunch of people, he was there to test the defenders of Earth, among other planets. After taking on Omni-Man for ages, he got to go head-to-head with Invincible. Instead of trying to end him though, Earth's greatest hope decided to talk with the extraterrestrial being. In doing so, they realized they had nothing to worry about when it came to dealing with each other. From then on, Alan proved to be an excellent friend and ally. He played a major role in all sorts of conflicts, especially when it came to dealing with the ever-dangerous Viltrumites. With all sorts of classic superpowers from insane strength, supernatural speed, healing abilities, and more, Alan is a force to be reckoned with. Plus, he has the innate ability to lead folks wherever he goes, which comes in handy. And to add in a little bit of extra fun, he's voiced by none other than Seth Rogen in the animated series. Nice. Coming in at number 4, Science Dog. Hell yeah, just listen to that name, how can you not love it? Science Dog is exactly what he sounds like, a superhero dog with powers thanks to science. It's so simple, so beautiful. Funnily enough, Science Dog is a well-known comic in the world of Invincible. In fact, it was Mark's favorite superhero growing up, and there are plenty of references to our experimental canine throughout the comic. Even though he's a fictional character in this universe, and even ends up becoming Seance Dog in the Amazon adaptation, he does make an interesting appearance in the comics. An alien decides to disguise himself as the altered Scotty and contacts Mark, asking for help saving his planet. A great disguise for sure. So even though Science Dog in his actual canon comic form doesn't make any direct impact on the Invincible universe, there is plenty to enjoy about his presence. Coming in number 3, we've got Wolfman. Usually werewolves are portrayed as the bad guy. They stalk the night, hunting unsuspecting prey and howling at the moon. From time to time, they'll leave a poor sap alive who will at some point become a werewolf too. It's a classic horror tale for sure. There are exceptions though. Teen Wolf is one, those werewolves from What We Do in the Shadows could be another, and Wolfman could end up on that list too. Gary Hampton, CEO of Hampton Industries, was out camping with his family when what seemed to be a bear attacked him. He healed up pretty quick, and it became very apparent that it was a much more supernatural creature. Discovering that he was now a lycanthrope, Gary decided that instead of giving into primal instincts, he would use his newfound powers for good. For a while, he teamed up with a vampire named Zechariah, and eventually Wolfman found his way into the Invincible universe. That's right, after aiding Adam Eve in a fight, he joined forces with Invincible and a bunch of other heroes to take down the Emperor. Isn't that fun when things work out like that? Coming in at number 2, we've got ANGSTROM LEVY. Just looking at this guy paints a pretty vivid picture, right? This is a mad scientist who has seen way more than he probably should have. He figured out that he had the ability to travel between parallel universes and worked up his proficiency over time. Eventually, he managed to find out about all the alternate ANGSTROM levies and recruited them in one way or another. Then, using the brain power of the Mahler twins, he had machines constructed that would download the knowledge of all its counterparts into his own brain. As it was happening though, Invincible crashed through the wall and started fighting the Mahlers. Levy hopped out of his machine to save Invincible, but that caused it to melt down. It exploded, and although the transfer was technically complete, Levy was horribly disfigured and his personality was irreversibly altered. Now he is a violent, super smart maniac with a hate-on for Invincible. Poor guy, but he kind of brought it on himself. And finally, at number 1, we've got Sequids. Parasitic alien cephalopods are never going out of style, are they? These creatures take over people's minds and then connect to a hive mind of sorts. Upon arriving on Mars, Invincible realizes that the human astronauts there are susceptible to these horrid little things' influence. They want nothing more than to conquer, which could be very bad news if they ever made it to Earth. However, as nasty and dangerous as they are, they're unable to bond with Martians or Viltrumites. So they're a big pain and cause a lot of problems for astronauts, but can't be too big of a threat, right?
Starting us off at our top 10 is a villain known as Bootface, a guy who takes off his boot and puts it in your face. Well, not really, that would just be stupid. Kind of like his name. In Peter Tomasi's Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 23.1, Two-Face, we see the death of this weird character. Bootface is a minion of the villain Terminus and only appears in 12 issues. His first one being Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 10. His exact origin is still unknown, but the reason why he is called Bootface is because during a prior battle with Batman, Bootface tries to burn Batman with a flamethrower. And of course, Batman kicks him in his face, leaving a mean-looking boot print permanently in his face, thus giving him the name Bootface. I should also mention that Bootface has no powers whatsoever. He's just another bully looking to try and hang with the cool kids. So yeah, this is a weird one and maybe even a villain that was never even needed, but I'm sure as a writer it's fun making up dumb names every now and then. But don't worry, the fun doesn't stop here. At our number 9 spot, we have the terrifying and gruesome Flamingo. First appearing in Batman number 666, ooh, that's a nice number. Written by Grant Morrison, we meet Eduardo Flamingo, who was just an ordinary man until he got caught up with the mob. The mob then brainwashed him and also turned him into a serial killer who eats the faces of his victims. Flamingo sounds pretty dangerous, but doesn't really dress like it. He wears all pink and rides a pink motorcycle and is also always seen with his whip. He famously almost killed Red Hood before Batman and Robin came to his rescue, but just after that, he did shoot Robin in the back 5 times at point-blank range. Making sure his punishment was indeed painful for his attack, Scarlet slashed the right side of Flamingo's face and then was hit by Jason Todd by a bulldozer, and then Red Hood dropped a huge mass of rubble onto him too. It appears that he is killed, but there is no body that is ever actually found. This guy might not seem like he is deadly or lethal at first glance, but I guarantee you he is quite the match. The only category he doesn't beat Batman in is his style, because damn, Flamingo is fly. Moving on. At our number 8 spot, we have Dr. Freak. First appearing in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight number 91, written by Garth Ennis, we meet Dr. Freak, a former Vietnam soldier who creates a powerful drug known as DCS-2000. Sounds pretty cool, right? No, it doesn't. Stay in school, kids. DCS-2000 is a super powerful version of... What does he do with his victims after he kills them? Well, he enjoys bathing in their blood, because that's what every other hippie would do in the world, right? I highly doubt it. Get it? Anyway, this character sounds like a great character that was probably made in the 60s, right? Nope. Garth Ennis wrote this character just as recently as 1997, making this villain even weirder than originally thought. At number 7, we have the sauciest villain of them all, the Condiment King. First appearing in the TV show Batman the Animated Series in an episode aptly named Make 'em Laugh, we find a series of comedians who are abducted and brainwashed by the Mad Hatter, and then are turned into the most mediocre of criminals. Mediocre is definitely correct because Condiment King's crimes consist of him shooting ketchup, mustard, and other condiments at his enemies while making terrible condiment puns all at the same time. Please excuse me as I relish in the greatness of that idea. This is another villain that sounds like he would fit in perfectly in the 60s, but of course this TV series ran in the early 2000s, with his debut in 2002. Sadly, he was killed later in an episode in 2009, and that was the last of our precious Condiment King. We shall miss you, O Great One. Rest in cheese. At number 6, we have the Calculator. At the age of 5, Noah Cutler was locked in a cage by his mother and would not be let out until he solved the Rubik's Cube. No wonder this guy grew up to be an incredibly intelligent supervillain. In Detective Comics number 463, we meet the terrifying Calculator, a villain from the 1970s comic series who would go across the country committing multiple crimes and would purposefully get caught by his enemies. Why? So he could press a magic button on his chest that would prevent the same hero from ever catching him again. In his first issue, we see him square off against the DC superhero the Atom for stealing a quake-breaking device from one of Ray Palmer's colleagues at the cost of a man's life. I don't think this weapon really worked too well, as he is recorded as having been defeated by many of the DC superheroes, including the Atom himself. And fortunately for him and all of us, he is no longer out in the field, but is now operating behind the scenes as an information broker for the criminal underworld, which I can only guess his desk is covered in Rubik's Cubes. Coming in at our number 5 spot, these weird villains don't get any less weird, we have Emoticon Man. Another amazing creation by the super weird mind of Grant Morrison. His first appearance goes back to 2011 in Batman Incorporated number 6, where Wayne Enterprises' press conference is interrupted by a new villain and his gang, the villain being Emoticon Man. Both him and his gang members wore these crazy emoticon masks, and that was all they wore for their supervillain costumes. There's not much else to tell on this one, so, he gets defeated, and then after that, he was never seen again. I wonder why. At number 4, we have the worst villain to spell, but maybe the best one to say, onomatopoeia. Now, wait, Dewey, isn't that a literary term? Yeah, it is. And it's also a Batman villain, because why the heck not? Let's make something original, even if it does sound really lame. Onomatopoeia is a serial killer with no superpowers, so guess which kind of heroes he goes after? Heroes with no powers, such as Batman. Back in 2002 in Green Arrow number 12, we meet Onomatopoeia for the very first time after he stalks and murders the heroine, Virago. He is named this because he only speaks in onomatopoeias, such as BAM! Woof! Wham! You get the picture. He goes up against Batman a few times and needless to say, obviously gets his butt kicked, but one interesting fact is that this character was actually created by the famous writer/director, Kevin Smith. Kevin, you are wicked awesome. Don't you think you could have come up with a little bit of a better villain than this? I mean, maybe he was still reeling from his loss of the Superman movie that he had going on with Nick Cage from years before, but you know, if that's the case, I'll give him a pass on this one, but seriously. Dude. Starting us off at number 3 is Calendar Man. Any of you gamers out there might remember this villain from the famous games Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, but this villain's first appearance actually goes back to 1958 in Bill Finger's Detective Comics number 258. As a child, Julian Day's father promised he would be back home for the holidays. He waited for his father from Christmas Eve to New Year's Day outside until finally police took him in. He was almost dead from exposure, by the way. From then on out, along with that terrible memory and a terrible relationship with his mother, that began the long and soon-to-be new life of the Calendar Man. So, what's this guy's deal? Well, he will only commit crimes on holidays, such as Christmas, New Year's, you name it. This guy started off really lame, but he was one of the lucky weird ones who got a revamp in the 1996 storyline, The Long Halloween, where he was quite the maniacal evil villain. As we all know, the holidays can be a tough time for a lot of people. We don't need any more stresses or problems than what we already have. So, this guy might just be the evilest villain on our list yet. Either way, I think I'm gonna start calling that one, family member at all the events, Calendar Man, because they'll never really know that I'm talking about them. Maybe you guys could use it too. At our number 2 spot, we have the villain from the infamous TV show Polka-Dot Door, also named Polka-Dot Man. I'm just kidding. He's actually from Batman, and there's probably a lot of you out there that have no idea what I'm talking about, and that was a wasted reference, but that's okay. Nevertheless, Polka-Dot Man is a weird Batman villain. First appearing in Detective Comics number 300 back in 1962, we meet the bizarre Polka-Dot Man. The man who dresses in a suit with polka dots all over him. But wait, it's not just because the look is highly fashionable, because it isn't. Because these dots can detach from his suit and be used as weapons on the talented dynamic duo. Some of these polka dots can even be used as a teleporter for moments when he is a major loser and needs to bail out of a fight. Yeah, that's right, polka dot guy, I called you a loser. What are you gonna do about it? Teleport out of here? Okay, I will go easy on him. After all, he was created in the 60s, and that was a very fun time, to say the least. So it kind of makes sense. No matter what though, this is a very strange villain, and I think it'd be hilarious to see him brought back into the fold. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot and the most likely supervillain for me to be ever cast as, Johnny Karaoke. First appearing way back in 2007's Batman number 660, we meet Johnny Karaoke, a man raised in Southern California before he attended UCLA for business administration. And then he put his education to good use in the American arm of the Yakuza. I will add, he was fairly successful. However, Johnny and his geisha girls break into Omni-Med headquarters, but is defeated by Batman before he escapes and then is later killed by a villain Grotesque. Johnny Karaoke dies by getting shot in the head just after singing his last tune into his skull-topped cane/sword. And with that, that is the end of Johnny Karaoke and the top 10 weirdest Batman villains on the list. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-da-ba. I'll leave the singing to Johnny Karaoke. Some of these were absolutely hilarious, and I can't imagine anyone ever coming up with any of these guys, and some of these were just quite lame. But lucky for me, I love a good lame pun, song, or even quirky costume. So I really do hope I see the resurgence of these villains in the comics, or even on the big screen. Maybe I could actually play Johnny Karaoke. My opening line? Here's Johnny! Okay.